Barr says he's independent, impartial, and a defender of the rule of law. Critics say he's behaving as a political actor, serving Trump's interests and not those of the people. Let's start there with former federal prosecutor Stephen Binhak. He served as associate independent counsel for Ken Starr during the investigation into President Bill Clinton. He is in Miami. All right, what was your assessment, Stephen, of Barr's testimony yesterday?
Well, I think from a legal matter, it didn't really break any new ground. I think he tried to say all the right things, and I think particularly the opening statement, he was very measured. I think from a political perspective, I think he probably won the day in the sense that the Democrats really tried to beat on him from political matter, and they didn't really pin him down as well as they probably could have. The questioning could have been better with a few exceptions.
Barr said he's independent, impartial, and a defender of the rule of law. Do you agree?
I think he believes he is. I think he has his view of the presidency and the breadth of the power of the presidency. And I think he's supporting that view of the unitary executive. I can see why people think that he's being that he's not independent, because he is. I think he's supporting the president and giving the president wide berth from a constitutional standpoint. And I think it's very hard for people to divorce that from their political views.
What does the law, the Constitution say attorneys general are supposed to be? Are they the lawyer for the country? What is their involvement with the president?
Well, that's a great question, right? And I think the world really changed after the whole Nixon Watergate situation. You know, at the end of the day, each cabinet member serves at the pleasure of the president under the Constitution for the president. And if you believe the president is the boss, they serve to the president. And so that means that the attorney general is no different than the secretary of agriculture or the secretary of commerce, and so therefore serves for the president. I think since Watergate, we have come to see the attorney, and let me give an example of Bobby Kennedy, who was the president's brother, and it certainly served to protect him. I think since Nixon, we've changed our view, and the prevailing view has been that the attorney general should be more independent. And I think with this particular president and the last two attorneys general, we've had people who were probably a little more pro-president than the previous post-Nixon attorneys general. And I think that's come as a bit of an adjustment for many people, particularly critics of the president.
Do you like that idea?
You know, I like the idea of a little more independence from the Department of Justice. I think it sits in a very special place in the part of the government of the United States. When people are in court and people are going to have their liberty deprived, they need to know that it's fair. And they need to know that there's no favoritism one way or the other. And I think one of the real problems with the Stone case, and I think this puts it in very serious relief, is on the one hand, Attorney General Barr said yesterday at the hearing, look, he's a 67-year-old man and he was going to go to jail for 9 years. I don't think that's appropriate. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And I have made that argument on behalf of some of my older clients in court and some of my younger clients and people. I've made arguments similar to that. But the problem is that when it appears to the rest of the world that the president's friend gets a deal and other people don't, then that undercuts the fairness. And I think that sows the seeds for some very, very serious problems in our country. If we can't believe as a country that the justice system is fair and that people are fairly prosecuted and with blind justice, as it were, I think we start down the path to a very serious problem.
Like how many other 67-year-olds who got longer sentences did Barr ask them to reduce the sentence?
Well, the answer appears to be none, and that's a very serious problem, and that's a serious issue. And when you juxtapose that against the Cohen situation, where Cohen wasn't helpful to the president, and then he goes back into jail, right? So it looks like he's getting punished, and then a judge in New York takes him out and says that essentially it was abusive. And all this is happening within a 3-week period. And that causes people to ask some serious questions about fairness. And, I think, remember, the Constitution starts with we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. And I think that people are willing to take on obligations, and they're willing to take on this tough stuff, and they're willing to see people lose their rights, but they want it to be fair. And when there's this feeling that it's not fair, that is very corrosive from my perspective. And we have to guard against that.
What do you make of his defense of the federal forces in Portland?
That's another problematic situation. I mean, he says the right things, right? There's no question at all that people burning down buildings and particularly attacking federal installations like courthouses, that is just out of bounds. I think we can all agree that that's not right. And I think we can all agree that the federal government has a huge interest in bringing law enforcement to protect federal areas. When that law enforcement starts to stray down the block, and when that law enforcement starts to come into places where it starts to exceed the mission, then it leads to the possibility that it leads to what we have now, is that people just start to question. And then the president's political rhetoric on top of that, we're going to dominate the protesters. It makes it feel as though this is punishment rather than protection of a federal asset. And that's, again, raises really serious problems.
Okay, what about Barr's statement that he does not agree with the assertion that there is systemic racism in the American police departments?
So that's really interesting, because in his opening statement, what he wrote is he said that he had spoken to people about it and that they had looked at it, and he said that the concern is a legitimate concern. I think those are his exact words. But then when pushed exactly on it, he said that he doesn't believe there's systemic racism. I think that's a tough one to swallow for a lot of people, who know the criminal justice system well. I think people really believe, and I think rightfully so, that folks with darker skin are more likely to get pulled over in traffic stops, are more likely to get a more punishing sentence, and get treated a little differently, and that's just not a good thing. So, it's just a good example where on paper he was measured. When he got into the Congress, I think he was a little more proactive. But I also don't dispute that he actually believes that. And I think there are people who believe that, and so I don't think he was sitting there lying.
But that's troublesome if the Attorney General believes that, isn't it?
I'd want the Attorney General of the United States to be going out of his way to make sure that justice was fair to every American, no matter what wealth, race, ethnicity, sex, whatever. It just should be equal, and we should be doing every single thing we can to guard against any, not just not just the different outcomes and different treatments, but the perception. When you make a motion to ask a judge to recuse him or herself from a case, the issue is not just should the judge factually be recused. The issue is, should the judge be is there a perception that the judge should be recused? And I think the same thing is true with this. I think we have to go one step further than the Attorney General's going.
When he used the word superb to discuss the president's handling of the pandemic, did that surprise you?
No, but it's another excellent example of where he's acting, I think, as a political actor, and not as necessarily an independent legal voice. I mean, I'm sitting here in Miami, and we have a very frightful situation down here with COVID. I mean, our hospitals are overrun. We're running low, if not completely done with ventilators. It's just a little scary to be. And for the president or any of his people to say that we're doing a superb job, it doesn't sit well. It doesn't sit well with me. I've got longer hair than I've had since 1980, and it's because I can't go to the barber and because I can't leave my house. So that just didn't sit right with me.
Miami leads the country. What's it like to be there?
Well, it's a little scary, I got to tell you, in the sense that, we have more and more people getting sick, and we have fewer and fewer hospital beds. And so, I really worry for people who are older and people who have health problems. And I think what we're seeing here is what we're seeing in the rest of the country is there are a number of people that can work from home, and this really hasn't fully made a change in their lives, and that's good for them. But we also have people who, notwithstanding all this problem, have to go out and work their jobs, whether they work in a grocery store or a hospital or whatever. And I think, I don't feel comfortable. I feel comfortable going with my mask to a grocery store, but I don't know that I'd feel comfortable working there every day for 8 hours a day. So
Barr says that he has no reason to think the election will be rigged, but he says there is an increased high risk of massive voter fraud when you have mail-in. Do you agree with that?
well, yes and no. It almost depends on what you mean. There's no question that if you have people mailing in ballots, it's less secure than people walking up to a polling place, showing their ID, and voting in person. But the question is, does that undermine the election? And I'm not sure that I don't think it does. I think we've had mail in for a long time.
How much confidence do you have in the election?
I
The
have
integrity of the election?
I have a confidence in the election. I do. I think I have faith that first of all, it's 50 different states, and I think there will be some fooling around. I think there always has been. There have been allegations of fooling around from the beginning of the republic, but in the end, there are very few states that are super super close, and I think it's diverse enough that it'll be okay.
Stephen, always great talking with you. Thank you so much for your time, and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too, and thanks for having me. Have a great evening.